good evening. The time is 7:30 on Thursday, July 18th, 2024, and I'm calling the Village of Martins Additions a council meeting to order. No need to adjust your eyes in the room where it happens or at home. In the spirit of beginning a new fiscal year on July 1st, we had the recent opportunity to retake our oaths and submit our volunteer paperwork, as well as shuffle our council roster around a little bit. I am Katie Filipczek Howard, and I will be serving as this year's council chair. Before I announce the other positions of my colleagues, two of whom are attending remotely tonight, I wanted to thank Arthur Alexander for serving as chair in FY 2024. Arthur, I think you are our longest serving council member, is that?
Sitting around this table, yeah.
He was first elected to council in 2010.
Something like that.
Yeah, and I think the same year as my late mom.
No, the year before.
The year before, okay. Well, one of the things Arthur did as soon as I was elected in 2021 is he sent a picture of himself with my mom and former chair Richard Krychek, and that was really meaningful and thoughtful. So thank you, Arthur. In addition to last year, you were also council chair in 2013, 14, and 15?
Something back then.
Okay, well, that's a good run.
Yeah.
Okay, and we are all grateful for his service, and I will further appreciate his guidance. So Arthur will be following council member Andrew Powder's trend and going from chair to our at-large position. Andrew will be serving as this year's vice chair. Susan Fatty will serve as secretary, and Jeff Lander will continue as council treasurer. So Arthur, Jeff, and Susan, congratulations again on your recent reelection and another new term to council. And Andrew and I are now entering the second year of a second term. So I look forward to continuing our work as a collaborative council. And I'm honored to serve in this position of chair. In 2025, we will be recognizing the 40th anniversary of our municipal government, and it's meaningful for me to serve. I am the fifth female chair in our history, so thank you to all my colleagues, to the residents, especially Liz Verassi and Lori Matthews, who provided treats tonight. They're for everybody. Thank you. And she's looking very sharp too. Thank you, Liz, dressed for the occasion. And so thank you. And we're going to move on to our first agenda item, if that's okay.
It's great. Your family is here. I hope that you take appropriate pictures.
We did. It was a little field trip. We had family pictures and photo ops before. So, but thank you all. And yes, the first item on our agenda tonight is an update from our Montgomery County off-duty police officers. Officer Nick Paserno, did I say the name correctly?
Yes.
I got it. Okay. So particularly we'll be hearing about the recent robbery of Brookville Pharmacy and the assault on pharmacy staff that occurred a couple weekends ago.
You could also note he's attorney, Paserno.
I mean,
I did not know that. All right. Well, officer, welcome.
I'm not competing with Ron.
Oh, okay.
So, I know we don't go to the podium, but it's camera and all that stuff, and I have my iPad. So, thank you for having me. Mike Pratt sends his, I'll say he sends his regrets. He's at the beach, so it's not exactly regrets. He's not here, but if he was here, he'd be saying the exact same thing. I'd be saying, only he'd move his hand a lot more than I do. So, I'm gonna talk about a lot of stuff. I'm gonna try to be as quick as possible because I know it's summertime and you guys might have questions. But I'll just talk about real quick, like not the elephant in the room, but we had the robbery at the Brookville Pharmacy. And so I have not been here as long as Mr. Alexander has. I think I started here in 2014. But this is the second similar robbery we've had at the pharmacy in the time I've been here. The last I looked it up, I thought it was 2 years ago. It was actually 5 years ago. Time flies. It was 2019.
Mm-hmm.
I've been a Montgomery County police officer 22 years. I actually used to work in this beat when I was a young officer. I remember even back then, there were issues with burglaries at the pharmacy. We had never quite seen the level of violence we've seen in the last two incidents. Being driven by a bunch of different things. Like it started with, with rooftop burglaries or smash and grab burglaries where people knock out the front door. escalated to the rooftops, then it escalated to the two actual robberies that we've seen in the last 5 years. What's driving that? Like a lot of the crime we've had, it's being driven by prescription narcotics. In this particular instance, two guys went in. So one was definitely armed with a handgun, at least it appeared to be a handgun. The other was acting as though he was armed. They stole money and a bit of narcotics. What we have seen traditionally, both with burglaries and with robberies, is that these local community pharmacies are often the targets of these sort of crimes because they're not going to have the same sophisticated security system plus internal safeties that you would see at like a CVS or a Walgreens, something like that. It's just the nature of the business. And oftentimes we'll see series of crimes that occur at these local places. So I remember with, I think with Michael a few times I've had it, I know with Niles before, with Matt before, if I had heard of an event happening at the pharmacy on Cabin John, the one at the end of MacArthur Boulevard, or the one up in Kensington, I'd always make sure I sent a press release like, hey, look, just FYI, we had one of these. These often happen in series. Same thing with the one that happened a couple of days ago. I'm not giving away any law enforcement sensitive information when I say that there was publicly announced at least two others. I think there's two others. Certainly one in DC. There's some others we believe may be connected. Very similar looking vehicle description, very similar description. So this, like every other time we've seen this happen, appears to be part of like a greater trend that are targeting these neighborhood mom and pop type pharmacy locations. I can't give out too much as far as law enforcement sensitive information about the investigation, other than there is an active investigation being worked by a major crimes division. Like I said, there's every time an event happens, the chance of you being able to put more and more pieces together to solve the crime increase. And I think if I was a detective, based on what I know, I would feel pretty confident about solvability factors in this case. So that's that. Other crime in general, one nice thing is, we live in a data-driven society, data-driven law enforcement world. And on the county's website, there are plenty of places where you can pull up crime stats and actually see what happened in your neighborhood. Whenever you have a crime like this happen, it's going to send fear into the community. I totally understand that. Does not change the fact that Martin's Additions still remains an extremely place safe to live, both in the county generally and in the 2nd district. So I don't really have a good way to share this. And this is, I can't like provide this information to anybody, but you see these, so this is a map. This is our tactical crime map. And if I actually dial on these locations, I'll kind of show it a little better. So you actually have these dots here, right?
Oh, yeah.
These dots, if I click on them, gives me like a more dialed down version of what happened. If you go on the county's website, they will have a more secure version. I say secure. It won't dial down the dot to the exact location. It will dial down to like the 100 block or the region, right? So it's not 100% great to be like, oh, this crime happened at this location. It'll tell you within a couple blocks, but you have a ballpark idea of what's happening, right? Lots of dots here. That being said, this is 3.5 years worth of crime data in this area, okay? But you also can notice the Martin's Additions area is significantly less dot filled than even the neighborhood immediately to the east of us, which I don't know what you call the neighborhood, but between us and the park, or the Meadowland Park. A lot more dots in that area than here. These dots they won't represent things. These dots, for lack of a better word, are those things that proactive criminal enforcement could probably stop. It's not going to be things like domestic violence calls and stuff like that. It's burglaries, robberies, indecent exposures, auto theft from auto, things like that. And again, this is 2021 through today. And if you count the number of dots up in the Martin's Additions half trapezoid, or the rhombus of Martin's Additions, you're probably talking about 8 to 12 such events. Now it's 8 to 12 events more than we should have. That being said, it still remains a very safe place to live. Two things I'll talk about, because I am a tech nerd. Two developments that I think are going to be good for the the village. So for about maybe 6 months now, a little more than that, Montgomery County Police has had what's called a drone as first responder program. We were the largest jurisdiction on the East Coast to have one, only the second, I believe, in the East Coast to have one. We are by far the largest department in the country to have one. And within 6 months, we will have the largest program in the country for any size agency. What drones as a first responder is we actually stage, it's called a Matrice 350. It's a drone about as big as one of these tables, maybe a little bit smaller, staged on top of a building. We use technology called Live 911. So if somebody calls 911 and they say, I'm at the Brookville Pharmacy, I just got robbed, right? That phone call goes to a call taker. The call taker takes the information down. They put it into a CAD. The CAD gets sent to a dispatcher who then provides the dispatch information to officers in the street that have to drive here, lights and siren to get here. The process from call to dispatch takes about 4 to 5 minutes. At the same time with Live 911, the drone operator who's in Gaithersburg hears the call happening in real time, and the drone will take off from the stage location. So right now we have one in downtown Silver Spring and one in downtown Wheaton. We're gonna be adding one to downtown Bethesda and adding one into Gaithersburg. The drone will take off and fly the scene. My numbers gonna be a little off. I believe we're at 80%. 80% of the time, the drone will get here before the officer gets here. And probably about 50% of the time, the drone gets here as the call for service is being dispatched. Which means is if you have a robbery just occurred, the drone can be here if a suspect fled on foot, a suspect's in a vehicle, the faster response time gives better information. The good thing for the drone program starting in downtown Bethesda is we live in probably the most restricted airspace in the country, in the DC region. We have to get waivers, we have to get permission to be able to fly the drone in this region. So we're capped at our distance. So the drone site in Gaithersburg, which is outside of the free zone, the flight restricted zone, can go 3 miles because you can actually let it go farther. Under FAA rules, you have to be able to see the drone. So in the flight restricted zone, the distance is a lot shorter. We're going 1.5 miles. But in the village, if you go air miles, we are going to be within the 1.5 mile region. So if somebody calls 911, and there's a call for service during the time the drone's operational, and the weather is good like today, the drone can be overhead as a call for service is happening. It's really helpful for these type of events that happen here in the village, theft from autos and things like that. People see suspicious activity, somebody walking around trying door handles, call 911. A drone can be here a lot faster than a patrol officer, and the drone can follow the suspect overhead, giving information to officers who are on the scene.
How long can those drones be in the air?
About 30 to 40 minutes.
30 to 40 minutes.
And what we found is a couple times we pushed the envelope because, like, whatever's happening, we have to keep overhead. One of my best friends in the world runs the program here, which is why I know so much about it. But most times, once the officers arrive on scene, all right, well, drone can leave. So we're not really, 45 minutes is plenty of time, 40 to 45 minutes.
Okay.
Huge addition for us. One, if you're a tech nerd like me, it's cool, it's different, it's new edge. We don't have a helicopter program here in Montgomery County. This drone will do a lot of that drone. The helicopters do, in the aggregate, a lot cheaper, a lot greener way of doing business. We've already had amazing success stories in Silver Spring and in Wheaton. The program originally started in Chula Vista, California, which is outside of San Diego. They've had tons of instances where they've responded to events and have been able to call police officers off. I think we're about 50 or 60 times a month where we're able to say, hey, we're on scene. What a citizen is saying is X, is actually Y. Don't go, and you don't need to send a police officer. That's helpful because we are down 200 officers in the county. The second district alone, last I talked to the commander here, she told me she has 58 officers in the district working. When I worked here as a patrol officer, we were in the 80s or 90s. So the staffing crisis we're facing in the agency is affecting every district. We have to use technologies to be able to leverage things. So that leads to my second thing I'll talk about, which is a project I'm involved in, is probably in the next week, maybe less, we'll be doing a press release from the department announcing a partnership with a program we're calling MoCo Connect. It's a similar program that exists in DC and New York, Orlando, Raleigh, Atlanta, Prince George's County, Anne Arundel County, where I am one of my roles is I'm the project director for our real-time crime center. What MoCo Connect will involve is private, it does actually have two things. So if a resident wants to register their camera, they can go on this website, takes about a minute, they fill out a bunch of information, and they actually will pop up on a map that only police can see that says there's a camera here. That's helpful if we have a theft from auto, we can draw a circle around that crime and it'll automatically send an email to everybody who's in that circle to say, we're investigating a crime that happened at this time, we're looking for X. And if somebody has a video, think, hey, this may be helpful. This is a person walking through my front yard at 3 in the morning. It's unusual. They can just clip that video, upload to a link they get, and then the detective will get it on the back end. That's for private residences. The other thing it does is camera integration, which I think would be really, really helpful here in this, for lack of a better word, the commercial business district of Market Conditions. It also allows us to integrate cameras. You can get a box. The cost is pretty low. And we may be able, even for the pharmacy, to be able to cover it on our end because of the type of business it is and because there's an issue there in the past. You plug this box into your camera network, it will actually stream the cameras live to us at our center and for officers in the field. Same like thing that the drone program, it's more educated, better informed decision-making. So if an officer responding to a scene, again, if I describe a suspect as being white male, blue shirt, blue pants, and I see Jeff and Michael walking 2 different directions on Brookville, who am I going to stop, right? Who else in the room is wearing blue shirt and is a dark blue, right? We have that issue all the time. Clothing is very similar, So the beauty of having this sort of program is officers responding then can pull up the camera feed and be like, we're looking for this guy. No context of clothing anymore. You're looking for an actual person. It's better, more involved, responsive decision making. One, it helps the community. We're not going to stop somebody who's innocent and it's clear that the person we're looking for. Our response can be more detailed. So there's so the drone program, not quite ready yet here. And for the citizen, for people in the community, it's not going to be something that, they're going to call 911, the drone's going to show up. It's not something they need to do. With the registration stuff, I can get to Michael and the integration stuff. That's going to be a huge component for the community, not just here in the village, all over the county, to actually take a proactive step in their own, crime fighting. So I have talked without breathing for like 8 minutes.
Okay.
I'll open up questions.
Okay.
Yeah. Jeff, did you?
I'd be happy to. First of all, thank you so much. We're really grateful to you. And I know, as you said, this recent event, I think, shook a lot of folks. And of course, our heart goes out to Scott and others. And just a couple of thoughts. First, and again, this is not to go down a dark corner, but I think that we have to recognize that both times, 5 years ago and in recent, a firearm was involved. Particularly in this case, we're talking about a young child who was actually in the store at the time. And so I share all this because we could be easily talking about a different scenario. And I think if that scenario was a bit different, we'd probably be, I would say that we'd probably be looking at different countermeasures. So I just want to kind of put that in context that it easily could have gone a direction that we're very fortunate. So I look at this as what are there, or if any, countermeasures we could take that would deter or strengthen. And I think you mentioned a whole bunch, and I'm not going to go here. This is not the time because this is actually something that we could talk hours about, which I would welcome to maybe in a different standalone. But I do want to share. I did speak to Scott, who was the person who's been assaulted. And I asked him point blank, I said, what could we do? What is it possibly that we could do to make you feel safer? And, anyone who knows Scott, he's a very unassuming. I mean, I think he was working the next day, right? But he shared, he mentioned, let's lock the back. I think at the time it wasn't locked. He did say, though, something that I think resonates with us is, and remember, this happened during the day around the corner from our farmers market, where there were a lot more families. So this really could have turned into something I'm glad it didn't. Let's put it this way. So he did mention, and I think it's a reasonable thought, is, are there ways we might be able to either beef up a presence, maybe we think of, at least around the farmer's market, or we think about periodic times that we might have a marked car or something, that he felt that he was very realistic. He's like, we can't afford, the pharmacy can't afford to have someone there all the time. But he felt maybe we could think a little bit about how we might have a bit more of a presence, especially around where there may be times that if something like that happens, we want to avoid it, or we want to deter it. And you, like I said, if we somehow get that out and it's known with a car, or I don't even know, signage that we have, like a watch or something, maybe that could help. I'm not saying it would be the solution, but it may make folks feel better. But also, I think the idea that we have this crowded market, I think it would make a lot of folks feel good, even if it were for an immediate, maybe beef up, and then maybe over time we'll see. And the final point, I'm sorry if I'm joining on, the last thing is, I appreciate the statistics. I really do. And anyone who recognizes it, when you look on these like heat maps like you do, I mean, Martin's Addition shows up as like an A+. But I do think that we have to recognize that in short order, if you look at downtown Silver Spring or Friendship Heights, it can go to like a D or a D-, which is like a mile and a half. I walk to the station, often. And then we don't know exactly the impact of the purple line and how that may create access to certain things. So I just put out there that statistics are good, data is good, I love it, but we may want to be a little bit more cautious about the idea that we're really a stone's throws away to perhaps some other things and other communities that their ratings are much more severe. So anyway.
Arthur, did you have any questions? Any, Andrew or Susan? Or can residents ask questions? I see Marty hand up.
Sure, can I just say a
Oh,
couple
yeah.
things first? First of all, Nick, I want to say thank you. You were super responsive that Saturday afternoon. We were on the phone that same afternoon. You had emailed me within minutes of the crime actually happening. That allowed me to get, the council updated, and I think calmed a lot of us to make sure that we're all on the same page, which for our response is really important to be all on the same page. So that was really helpful. So I think it's always helpful to start with the things that we did right, the things we did good. And then, I think the same question that Jeff was asking, like, what can we possibly do better? A lot of people were responding and throwing out a lot of ideas on ways we can, improve the safety of this neighborhood. So open to ideas, and like Jeff said, maybe we can have a conversation offline about that as well. The second thing is, we have been constantly asking for more traffic control, especially on Brookville Road. And I don't want this separate issue to get lost in this. And maybe actually with more police presence, we could solve two birds with one stone. Having a marked car, like Jeff said, would actually deter people are running the stop signs here in front of the market where kids are crossing. People are speeding down Brookville Road constantly. I have reached out to the 2nd District Commander asking for this police presence. So I'll ask you here on the record as well, but we really need some more county presence on Brookville Road.
So what I'll say about obviously from the Mark car perspective, we talked about that before. Mike and I have been here for 11 years now, right? We've been blessed I came here as a sergeant, so was Mike, and we have been promoted twice to now we're both captains. And with assignment comes the vehicle you drive, right? I'm transferring again next week, special operations. So I have a different car than I have now. It should look more police-like, but they don't issue marked cars to officers once they hit a certain rank. So it's just, that's the hand we're dealt in that regard, right? If the village decides they want to hire, an additional officer, that entail, like, part of the parameters is, marked car, certain hours, like, I can facilitate that so, if you guys are like, look, Mike and Nick, screw you guys, have a good day, we're gonna find new people. That's your right to do. So we are, for lack of a better word, contract employees of the village, right? Hope you guys don't do that, but that's your choice to do so. One thing to keep in mind from a financial point of view, there are, with the shortage of officers, there's a supply and demand issue. because there's so many shorthanded, all this patrol shifts are so shorthanded, there's a ton of overtime available for officers. Overtime comes with it protections of being on the job versus secondary employment. There's, tax benefit, there's ease of the work. I know of officers who are working 100 hours every pay per overtime. That is insanity. But there are sergeants who are gonna make over $300,000 with overtime this year, right? So that drives that supply and demand chain, right? What we're finding is that secondary employment market then is being driven up. So to get somebody to say, I'm not gonna work an overtime gig, I will do because most of the people getting overtime are patrol officers, marked car, uniform, your average patrol cop, it's average, but your own patrol cop. That then drives the market differently. So the cost of hiring somebody is going to be significantly more than what it was coming into it. Now, again, totally can have a discussion. That's like it's often said, not my money. So you guys, you're the keeper of the purse. So if that's something you want me to look into, by all means, I can make some inquiries and see what I can do. It just keep in mind there's a supply and demand curve that goes along with it.
Good.
Maybe one thing just to add is we will be having an annual survey, right? And so we always have, I think, some question for residents around safety, and maybe this year we think about how do we tease that out a bit and get, suggestions and write-ins of just what folks would make them
Good
feel
idea.
more comfortable.
And one other thing I mentioned, and something that, Mr. Alexander said when I first got hired here, again, 11 years ago, what the real purpose of the program is. Understanding Mike and I are here 10 hours a week, and I think I did the math, that's 7% of the time. The chances of us being here when a crime happens is less than 1 in 10. Probably closer by my Neanderthal math, 1 in 15. The value we bring is there's a little bit of peace of mind of knowing, there's a 1 in 15 chance they're going to be here when something happens. But also it's that direct connection, right? When Michael calls me and says, hey, there's an issue going on, I tell him, all right, you got to talk to this person, or we facilitate that. That's always been, I think, in my view, like the benefit is, for lack of better words, like concierge medicine, right? Like,
Yeah.
you're going to get a doctor on the phone when you call one.
Right.
In the 11 years I've been here, I think I made 1 arrest. And he's a person who was running through backyards drunk, I think trying to commit burglaries. And I actually am catching them in Section 3 7 years ago, probably.
Can you chase them like that over the fence today?
Absolutely not. I wasn't chasing over a fence then either. I was driving.
Oh.
I'm smart enough to know I'm not going to outrun my car. Just something to keep in mind. But I said, like, by all means, like, I think it's a great community survey idea. Talking about, where the level of police presence here. Again, we can adjust that as necessary. The other thing I will mention again, we are leveraging technology for shortcomings of staffing. And improved care, there are communities I've talked to who are interested in putting up a camera in a location, right? Having potentially a camera here over, you have the block that says you have landlord paying rent to, potentially putting a camera somewhere that overlooks this block could potentially also be something that would help. Again, that's a decision that's comes with it. Other concerns, right? MPIA issues and data issues and things like that, record keeping issues. That's a conversation between you and Ron, but that's also another thing a lot of jurisdictions have done because they want extra layer of security, and we just where a police officer may not be available.
Madam Chair, I just one quick thing, and I want to be respectful of time, and we've looked at a long agenda, but one point I just want to throw out there is the counterfactual, right? We know that the pharmacy has been targeted with assault and with, and again, without going into all the details, but armed robbery. And we're very fortunate something more severe didn't happen. I put it out there because it's like, sort of like lightning striking twice in the same place. And we all don't want this to ever happen again. But I think it's something to keep very close watch on, which is, and we hope it doesn't happen, but if there is another event like this, an armed robbery or assault that happens again at the pharmacy, then I think we have a different question, which is the pharmacy. And is the pharmacy, as much as we love it and as much, but we then, because is our community, you know, if we continue to have things that target the pharmacy, and we've skirted, I think, some real, you know, we're very lucky that nothing happened other than an assault, and Scott was able to come into work both times the following day. But if something happened the other way, we'd be talking, I think, a very different story. So I just put it out there, not as a sombering note, because you were very, you know, uplifting in all the things that we could do. But I think we also just have to recognize that if it weren't for the pharmacy, we wouldn't be talking about this right now, probably.
Yeah.
Any residents?
Yeah, I would like to, if you don't mind, officer, just open it up to some of the residents, either in the room or over Zoom, because our community really was shook up. I mean, it was 12:20 on a Saturday. There was a neighborhood child who Scott heroically ushered out before he was assaulted, and the pharmacist on duty, incredible. So I just had one question before I open it up. Just what do you suggest for the pharmacy in terms of, like, I've noticed with this is a trash collection question too, multi-layers. They use clear bags to, I think, recycle the prescription bottles. So it's kind of an advertisement of kind of what they're carrying. I mean, is that like some safety, like, I mean, just.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, it's definitely
It
not
looks like
my,
right on the
Yeah.
front of the street. I've noticed that a couple of times. And then, you know, yeah, is a private security, a patrol, an answer for them as well?
yeah, I mean, so I'll say, like, my area of expertise is not necessarily physical security. You know, I think talk about, you know, locking back doors, like, you know, I mean, look at, like, let's say you go to a jewelry store, right? Let's say you go to Boone and Sons on Wisconsin Avenue, right? Yeah,
She's a resident.
Yeah, oh, really? Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Like, if I remember correctly, it's been a while since I've been there. You're getting buzzed in,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Now, doesn't necessarily lend itself when you're like, you know, like you're just trying to sell, you know, cough drops sometimes.
Right.
But, like, you know, do you potentially say, hey, look, you know, we're gonna have a bifurcated store where you can come and go into the,
Mhm.
you know, the convenience store aisles of it.
Mhm.
But to go deal with a pharmacist, you gotta go through a secure location, right? Like,
Mhm.
yeah, you know, we're gonna split it in two. And maybe the pharmacist say, look, when we're out on the floor doing work, we're not letting anybody in. We gotta go, you know, restock whatever, then we'll go back and let things flow, and we'll work behind a window. And there are ways you can do it, I think, where you're not making it look like you're, you know, working in a prison, right? Like, but again, that comes with some cost. I mean, I think ultimately, at the end of the day, like, the nature of the business is going to attract. It's a balancing act, right? Like, replace the pharmacy with a gun shop, you're gonna have the same issues. Replace the pharmacy
Or
with
a gas station that used to be down
gas
there.
station.
Yeah.
Oh, was there a
Yeah.
gas station? Gas station.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
down-
right.
yeah.
Real
Yeah.
close with it.
Replace it with, you know, one of the places that gets hit all the time are, thankfully it's not in here, vape shops. They get hit all the
Oh,
time.
what kind of shop?
Vape shops.
Oh.
What we don't
oh.
see very often
Mhm.
is marijuana shops being hit. I thought when marijuana became legal, it was going to be targeted very heavily. Well, because they're built from the ground up and there's so few of them, and there's money behind them, they have, and because there are very stringent security standards behind it, it's not like a bank. You know, you're not, you know, people do bank robberies. You don't get a lot of money out of bank robberies, right? Like, you know, people don't get a lot of money out of convenience store robberies anymore because there's infrastructure improvements in place, right? So these physical improvements, you know, there are things, you know, I would say potentially like bullards, like there are some already across what prevents a vehicle from driving in. Maybe having on both sides could be helpful. Door access could be helpful. Cameras are always gonna be helpful. Panic buttons and alarms are gonna be helpful. It's a balancing act. How much do you want to make it so it's not attractive for people to go there versus see that's a business decision. I'm not really, but that's kind of my thought.
Okay. I see, there was one hand up?
I know that Marty had her hand up, but,
Yes, thank you. Hi, this is Marty. Thank you. And Katie, congratulations on your new role as the council chair.
oh, thank you. Marty.
And I want to thank Michael and Officer Nick and the entire council for the speedy and thorough response to this second armed robbery at the pharmacy. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay. Couple things. I think that the village, since we benefit so directly from having this amenity here all these years, ought to be talking, and I guess this is Michael and the council, to the Shirazis about funding or helping to fund additional security measures within the pharmacy. What Officer Nick just said about hardening the target, having the pharmacy behind bulletproof glass, for example. One of the things I've done in my professional work over the years is help like 7-Elevens design safe zones for the employees at midnight on a 7-Eleven shift to go into a safe room behind bulletproof glass, you know, not just to hit an alarm button, which is also a good thing to do, but to actually give them a physical safety zone. Doesn't have to be like a prison. It can just be bulletproof glass, but that is something that the Shirazis, as the landlord, ought to be talking to the pharmacy owners about. And I guess our role as a village, I don't know, but maybe Michael send a letter saying that we encourage this because, as Jeff said, our residents are also at risk from this. We don't want to lose our pharmacy. We love having it here. And but making that pharmacy safer for the people who work there is clearly a priority. And there are not terribly complicated ways to do that. It doesn't have to be difficult. In terms of the deterrence of having a marked car here, there are a couple things that occur to me. One is to have Mike and Nick actually change your 10 hours a week to be at the farm market around noon on a Saturday. And you have a visible presence in uniform out in front of the shops. And again, it's a multi-part solution. While we're talking about this, I also want to ask about a different safety issue, which is people running stop signs. And, I worry about people getting hit. I know a lot of us do. We have had residents get hit. We've had one dog in my neighborhood here on Chestnut Street got hit. Dog's okay, but I think that we have now got in Prince George's County, we've got stop sign camera enforcement. That has just been approved. And Nick, I mean, you may recall 2 or 3 years ago, I was at a council meeting with you and I asked, can we do stop sign camera enforcement in Martin's Additions? And back then the answer was no, the county didn't do it. So I'm hoping that answer has changed. And I would like to ask the council and you to pursue stop sign camera enforcement on Brookville Road and at the stop signs on Thornapple Street in particular. There may be others. Those are just the ones that I see people blow through all the time at 40 miles an hour. Because the safety issue here, I mean, safety is really job one. And the pharmacy can in fact be safer. There are things we could do when we've made a list of them. The stop signs are another, what I see as immediate, ongoing hazard, a safety issue for our community. So, Officer Nick, I want a yes or no. Is a stop sign camera something that's going to come to Montgomery County in my lifetime?
I mean, certainly, I think in your lifetime, for sure. Like 40 years, I think definitely. In terms of stop sign enforcement, I know there's been a ton of change in the automated traffic world and what is allowed, what is not allowed.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if the Prince George's County stop sign program, I don't know enough about it. I will find out and I will let you know. I know we have automated speed cameras. There's one on Brookville Road. I know we have red light enforcement. I think there are like 90 or so fixed sites and a bunch of portable sites for speed. I don't know this stop sign enforcement piece. I'll find out. I'll let Michael know to let you know. It's not something I wouldn't be surprised if it's allowed now. It may be something that's just allowed in Prince George's County to be a local enabling legislation, but I'll find out and let you know.
Thank you. Thank you very much. One final question. This is for Jeff. Jeff, I liked your idea about putting some safety questions on the survey next fall, but I would hope that we don't need to wait that long. I think it would be very helpful to have a community forum over the summer. I mean, in the next month or two, before school starts in September, certainly, about community safety and really give residents a chance to talk about this. Because as Katie said, and as you all have said, people are really upset about this pharmacy thing. We've also had other incidents. I've heard, I don't know if it's true or not, that we had a school kid robbed on Taylor Street the other day. And we've had at least one incident reported to me of political vandalism. Somebody had a Biden-Harris sticker on their car that apparently got vandalized. So, people are kind of on edge here. And I think that it would be really productive to have a community forum, and I'm hoping the council will go ahead and do that, just to let people lay some of this out on the table and talk about it before just having a question on the survey in the fall, which I think is also a good idea, but let's do a forum in the meantime. Is that possible?
I would, Katie, would you like to?
Oh, so directed the forum to
I
you,
guess,
Mr.
So
Flores.
my quick 2 cents, Marty, thank you as always for being the advocate for, having more community input. What I would just share is I defer, let's work with Michael and with Katie on the scheduling. I know that, for example, August is a typical recess sort of, and also recognizing that a lot of folks are just out of town, which maybe we do need your presence
Yeah.
for that. But
Very
with that said, Marty, I think a lot of relevance to the idea of, perhaps rather than waiting until mid-fall, we could look at maybe having, something done a bit sooner, maybe, sometime after Memorial Day or something, but just recognizing that to try and do it between now and, the end of August, I think we should just take into account that, a lot of folks are away and turnout. But what we could do is perhaps at the, again, given the chair and how others feel, maybe in the September meeting, depending upon what the agenda is, we could actually carve out time on the next council meeting to extend this conversation. Because we've found that sometimes when we try and do standalone stuff, the turnout, is low. So if we could, perhaps build something into an upcoming council meeting, let's say September, I think we may have a stronger turnout. But those are just my initial thoughts. But your suggestions are very good and we appreciate it.
Yes, thanks, Marty. Ron.
Sorry, apologize. One thing I'll offer real quick on that vein,
Mhm.
You're right, scheduling is a little crazy right now.
Mhm.
If you give me enough lead time, I could probably get both the second district commander, or at least her designee, to come in
Yep.
and the project lead for the drone program to kind of talk about public safety in general.
Mhm.
Hopefully by that point, maybe we have some camera integration and I can talk about some of the progress we made there as well.
Great.
And maybe I could get like a 3 or 4 prong approach to make it, I'm boring, but the sizzle of some other people being here would help as well.
Last point, just because recognizing the urgency, I mean, there is a possibility, again, with the meeting minutes or whatever, I mean, perhaps we could provide an update to the community, just in terms of what we heard and, all these great programs that you're offering, just so that folks have a little bit of that reassurance that we're taking it seriously.
I can send Michael the camera integration piece. We'll be doing a press release probably next week about it. The drone program, actually did a presentation at Bethesda last night. It was open source. It's on Fox 5, did a story on it last night. So I can share those links with Michael to push them out. If anybody listening is interested in either the registration or the integration components, I can go direct, Michael can go direct with me. I'll switch hats from working here to work with the county, and I can put them in contact and kind of make some of that stuff happen.
Thanks, officer. And then Ron, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, yeah, I can add on the photo enforcement of stop signs in this past legislative session. House Bill 364 was passed that took effect on July 1 that allows cameras on stop signs in Prince George's County in school zones only. And that has a sunset provision of June 2029. So that's been approved as a pilot program for only 5 years, and just in Prince George's County and just in school zones. There was a bill in 2023, House Bill 367, that would have authorized stoplight cameras statewide, but that died in committee. So I think, like photo speed enforcement, it's still a sensitive issue. It has a lot of opposition based on the big brother arguments. And I think the legislature wants to see how this works in Prince George's County first, but it'll probably come back again.
Thanks. Thank you for that.
That answers that question.
Yes, right. And And thank you, everybody. Thank you, officer and attorney.
Welcome.
Okay.
This room is only Ron. I'll take thunder. Thank you,
Okay,
everybody.
thank you.
Thank you for your time. All right, well, we'll move on to our next agenda item. It's going to be from the man, the myth, the legend, resident Keith Allen, a weather report. Not to bury your lead, but it's hot. It has been.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
Bye.
officer.
Thank you, everyone, and welcome to the mother of all summers. And so far, we're probably on track for maybe the hottest summer ever on record. We talked about this pretty much the last couple of months that I was here, that we were going into a very hot summer with drought. And even though we're gonna get a brief respite for a couple of days here, that heat wave, unfortunately, I think will be coming back with a vengeance. And it's probably gonna last right into September. Now, you have to go back a long time in the weather annals and weather records to find 4 consecutive days where the temperature was over 100 degrees. You go back to 1930, which was the beginning of the Dust Bowl, the famous Dust Bowl of the 1930s. We had 4 days in a row of temperatures 100 degrees or higher back then. And in all that particular summer, we had 11 days where the temperature was 100 degrees or higher. In more modern times, the 2 hottest summers on record, number 1 was 1980 and 1988, if you can remember those. In 1980, it was 101 degrees on September 2nd.
Hmm.
You'd have to go back to 1939 to find a day in September where it was that hot, when it was, I think, 103. And that was the latest 100-degree day we ever had in September. We may be doing that again this year before all is said and done. In the meantime, it's going to be dry. And we were supposed to get, I thought, a little bit more rain out of these thunder showers coming through here the past few days. We had the one the other day that did some damage. That was very localized. That was only a swath of about 3 or 4 miles where you had such damaging and destructive winds. And hail, pea-sized hail. Did anybody see the hail the other day?
Heard it on the roof.
So you gotta go back a long time. 1930 was the last time we ever had. We tied that record yesterday with 101.
Keith,
Was
do you
100.
measure that in your yard, in your backyard?
I do.
You measure that
I
high?
do measure that, yes. So I keep all the records there. You asked me about
Yeah.
that at the last meeting, so if you ever want to have anything for right here in Martin's Editions, I've got those records there. But going forward, enjoy the next few days. The humidity with the best day, the nicest day for the rest of the month will be tomorrow.
Good,
In
okay.
terms of temperature and humidity. Does anybody have any questions for the weatherman? Okay.
Don't see any, but.
All right, now,
Thank you.
real quick, if I might interject here, because I gotta leave a little bit early, I gotta take off behind Nick here. The committee update, we're going forward on that, and we're excited about that. Everything went so well. We had over 200 people with a head count there at the 4th of July, the Independence Day celebration. And
That was a great party.
Thank you.
You guys did a great job. Thank you guys so much.
In fact, you're 1 step ahead of me. I was gonna thank you we're taking that a little lower up the committee of the FY25, but thank you, Keith. Yeah,
thank you for moving me up in the agenda.
yes, yeah,
And the movie night is August
Michael,
4th.
I wanted Michael to speak on that. and
Right,
Then
right.
we're done. I'm done.
yeah. The movie night is August.
Movie night is August 4th.
Yeah.
Flyers coming soon.
And thank you to everybody who produced the Independence Day celebration. Keith was out there, Yasmina, Aaron, Michael,
Had a lot of help.
Susan, the liaison, everybody was setting the party up, breaking it down, and it was a hot day. So thank you. Delicious food and
so good.
fun and festive. So great job. Great
We're
job.
letting people, the community choose what they want to watch
Mhm.
with these movies, with the movie night. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Keith.
everyone.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. All right. Thanks, everyone. All right, so.
See you tomorrow, Michael, after our walk.
Sounds good.
Okay, so residents, thank you so much for waiting patiently. We did a little reshuffling of the agenda tonight to accommodate some schedules. So this is the resident comment section. So please, who would like to make a comment? Liz, do you want to make a comment?
What do you guys want me to make a comment about?
Oh, you don't have to. Do you
You guys
have
are
any?
doing great.
Okay, well,
And I worked-
we
I
love
know you
those
guys are
comments.
Working on parking enforcement for me, which I really appreciate.
Yes, yes.
I know I'm the parking Karen or whatever they call that, but I appreciate you. I took it seriously and I'm here to support all of you. And Katie, I'm just so excited for your reign.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you very much.
I don't think we clapped as a group, but let's.
Thank you thank you very much. Thanks, Liz, and appreciate your support. Liz is a resident on Chestnut Street, Liz Varessi. So, any residents over, Zoom who wanted to comment, have any questions?
Yeah,
Oh, I
Marty
see
and Lynn Welly.
Lynn and Marty, okay, Marty and then Lynn. Is she?
Marty, you're muted.
I was gonna say, let Lynn go first. I'll come in after Lynn. Is
Okay.
that okay with you, Katie?
That's fine. Lynn, Lynn Welly, are you ready to comment?
Yes. Congratulations on your position.
Thank you, Lynn.
I, look forward to your being chair and hope it repeats. I was too slow on the draw when you were giving the positions of the new council members. I was wondering if you could repeat that.
What everyone's position is? Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes, I'm going to be serving as this year's chair. Andrew, vice chair, Susan, secretary, Jeff, treasurer, and Arthur as at large.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
AKA good troublemaker.
Right.
That's it for Lynn.
Okay, well, thank
Okay,
you. Thank you, Lynn. Okay, back to Marty then.
Yeah, I wanted to commend you all for something that was in the packet for this meeting, which is the schedule for the year. And as somebody who's always beaten the drum for good management process, I was really happy to see the council have whatever administrative meeting you had and put together. I think Jeff originally was the one who proposed having an annual overall calendar of what's coming up on the council meetings when. And it was really nice to see that in the packet. I think it's really helpful. And I would encourage you to make that even more available because the number of residents who actually read the meeting packets is probably pretty small. But I think that kind of information shows the council to be organized and responsive and, well functioning. And so it's the kind of thing that would be good to get out more widely. So I don't know what the format would be to maybe put it in the next newsletter or something. I know we don't have an August Village newsletter coming out, so maybe September. But that kind of overall schedule for the council's work for the year is the kind of thing that builds confidence. And so kudos to you for doing it this year. I thought it looked good. I'm sure it will evolve as, things come up. But I really just thought that was a great thing. And I'm encouraging you to make it more readily available so that people know that you're doing it. The second thing I wanted to raise is this issue about the zoning stuff, which a number of the other villages, and I think Jean can speak to this more in much more detail and much more knowledgeably than I can. The zoning changes about affordable or attainable housing. I'm really concerned about how that might affect Martin's Additions, especially with our small lots. And I don't know, maybe I shouldn't put Jean on the spot. Maybe she'll talk about it later, but I know she knows a lot more about it than I do. And I'm really worried about it because the idea that our infrastructure could handle duplexes or quads is really, we don't have enough fire hydrants, just to start with that piece, to have a 50% increase in the number of residents in this village and have public safety. Again, I'm beating a drum for public safety, but infrastructure and increased density have to go hand in hand, and we don't have infrastructure for what we need now. I'm going to just leave it at that, but I would like the council to put that issue front and center for some kind of community discussion up front. I know Kensington and other places are having community forums on it, and maybe we should too. Jean, was that a good intro? Unmute yourself. There you go.
I'm trying
They
there
were-
we go.
They're going by the metro, no? Where are they going?
Wait,
Oh,
let's-
sorry,
let's-
Jean is off
Can we
mute
move
now.
that, isn't that later on the agenda?
It is.
Yeah.
Can we move it up? Is that a thing? Can we do that here?
Wait,
Oh,
is
Oh,
Jean?
Jean, are speaking? Sorry, go ahead.
Well, can you hear me okay
Yes,
now?
yes.
Oh, okay, good. I wasn't getting my speaking voice on until now. Marty, thank you for introducing it. I know you have it on the agenda for later in the evening, this whole affordable attainable housing initiative that's being thrown at us. And I guess at this point, I would just ask you or encourage you to be sure, I know we'll talk about it again, that we turn to other municipalities, because the other municipalities are friends in the Red Book, Section 3, Section 5. I don't need to list them all. They're in the game. They're on top of it. I don't know how much Martin's Additions is on top of it, but I think we need to team up with them, because this is some very, very scary legislation to me. I went to the last county council meeting about a week ago. I teamed up with Jana Coe, the former manager in the town of Chevy Chase View. And we're going to go to the next one on Monday with the county council and the planning board representatives. Do you hear what they have up their sleeves for us? But I think it's very scary to me what is being proposed. And I think Martin's Additions needs to absolutely be on top of it. And fortunately, a lot of the other towns have already gotten out there and got it started, gotten the party started. I think I've shared some of the stuff, Katie, I may have shared it with you, Jeff, with you about the materials that are already out there. So we got to get our residents informed. We need to start exploring this. I think it's very, very important. I'll leave my comments there, okay? But I'm here to help if I can. All righty.
Thank you, Jean. Thanks. Okay. Any other comments?
That was
So is it okay to move this up in the agenda? Because I
Oh.
wanted to also understand it. Does that happen
Oh.
at this meetings, or do we have to go in order?
Well, I mean, we use the agenda is sort of the roadmap for
Yeah.
the evening. I mean,
If you have something to say now.
Yeah, go ahead.
This just brought to my attention.
Yeah.
How do we find out more about this? How is it, from what I understood is that
Mhm.
these duplexes were going by the new metro that was coming out.
Mhm.
Where are these duplexes being proposed?
Go look on the Montgomery County website.
There's
There's a lot of stuff
It's
there.
called
I
Thrive.
mean, there is a lot of stuff there, and I will tell you, Arthur, as a mom of 2 kids, it is very hard to dig through that website.
Oh.
So there is
I
someone.
put a summary in the packet for today's meeting, and it's
Okay.
called Thrive Montgomery. It's
Okay,
97
okay.
pages long, so I
It is.
agree that it's very long. But I do have a 1-page summary. in
But
the
actually
packet
here,
for today's
So
meeting.
why are
You
we
can
so
take
worried
mine.
about this?
Well, the concern is, I think, and please, anybody jump in on this issue is, there's there's a couple of issues here. There's the missing middle and how to house people and where should the structures go? And there are, certain rules that they'd be near, to take in mind that be near public transportation.
Mhm.
The purple line is
Yeah.
in line with all of this. But the municipalities are all being, they're all trying to write a letter to ask our state delegation nobody is saying that these structures can't happen or they're going to happen but if they do come, can we have some sort of say in the design and the structure that follows our current code, how I understood it. Anybody, Jeff or Arthur, Ron, if you would like to.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, before you go, let me just, I just want to address and just share what Jean had shared and also your comments. First, this is very complex and multivariate, and we'll hear a bit from Ron a little bit on the legal perspective, but let's put the legal aspect aside. What we know that looks like it's coming down the pike, and it is a very scary proposition, is currently the county's planning committee has provided a report to the full county council to ultimately vote upon that would change the zoning for what we are fit Village of Norton's additions is an R60.
Got it.
Currently, we have no multifamily
Got it.
dwellings. And so, but that's part of, as folks recognize, is when you looked at different places you might move to, one of the genuine things that people liked is you're so close to the city, but yet it feels like you're in a true suburb. Well, with everything that Katie had referenced, at the county level, they are looking to completely rezone R60s, but also other R90s, so that it just allows multifamily. And so that is one issue that is of concern, right? Because we have a roughly about 300 or so houses, single family, with about 1,000 population. So just think about the idea that if you were to create multifamilies in the same square footage, you could easily double or quadruple the number of folks. And what does that mean in terms of infrastructure, parking, things? That's one. That is at the county level. The other issue, which creates the accelerant effect, is right now some ambiguity at the state level, which about our authority as a municipality to regulate all housing types. So right now, because we're single family, all the things that we have right now in our code is very focused on single family. So all the things on setbacks and that we're used to, if you have to apply for a waiver or a permit. Well, why this could be an accelerant effect is if the state doesn't reinforce or affirm our authority as a municipality to regulate multifamily, then it's sort of like game over, right? If all of a sudden the county pulls this rezoning that allows multifamily, and then our municipality authority doesn't allow us to regulate, that's where the fear of, oh, wait, are we gonna look like downtown Bethesda or things like that? So that is kind of the layperson I just wanted to share, and that's why we'll talk more. There's a letter to the state. Are we going to write anything to the county? Because it's two very separate issues, but
Yeah.
the thing is together, it creates an accelerant.
Yeah.
So now it's Ron's turn to
Yeah.
say all the things I may have said incorrectly or wrong about that,
Sure.
but I wanted to share.
And same, and Ron, please, correct me on anything. It's a looming issue. It's important. And Ron Bald is our village attorney, and this is resident Liz Verassi has a question. So yes, Ron, if you could boil it down into like an elevator speech, can you kind of address the issues that Liz is asking about? That's new to, yeah.
Yeah, sure. Trying the elevator speech approach. So the Montgomery County Council put together the general plan known as Thrive Montgomery. And part of that plan is the creation of what's been referred to as missing middle housing. The county has found that, simplifying it here, much of the workforce can't afford to live in the county. And so more affordable housing types need to be allowed in areas that have traditionally been single family only. And the state, in the past legislative session, the governor's Housing Expansion and Affordability Act of 2024 authorizes qualified projects that include attainable housing strategies in municipalities and other areas, and prevents municipalities from imposing restrictions that would be deemed unreasonable. And in addition to that, as Jeff noted, the county council is also considering at the county level how to implement Thrive Montgomery and how to implement attainable housing strategies. And the planning staff has recommended to the county council that in the R60 zone, where right now only single family houses are allowed and duplexes under optional development, where the developer includes moderately priced dwelling units. That's all that's allowed now, and the planning staff's recommendation would be that duplexes and triplexes also be allowed as of right in the R60 zone, including Martin's additions, as Jeff noted. And that quads, 4 units in a building, would be allowed on lots that are within, I think it's a mile of the red line, purple line, and MARC rail stations, or within 50 feet of a growth corridor as identified in the planning maps in Thrive Montgomery. And as Jeff noted, the village's building regulations are based on authority granted to us in 1991 and expanded in 2006. And during those times, we were only dealing with single family. So that's how the law is written. However, we do have a letter from the Attorney General indicating that office believes the authority would extend to any types of buildings. But we do want the state to clarify the issue and just, eliminate any argument that we don't have the authority to regulate multifamily. But, we do have to keep in mind the governor's law that I just mentioned, because that does say we can't implement any building regulations that would unreasonably prevent qualified projects that include attainable housing. And the legislative attorney for the General Assembly on that particular bill issued a letter stating what this means is we don't want local governments adopting de facto provisions as intentional obstacles for multifamily construction. So some municipalities, have said, of course, we're not going to try and get in the way of multifamily housing. We recognize it's coming. We just want the ability to impose the same requirements on single families or the same requirements on multifamily as we currently apply on single family. So for example, let's say a triplex was allowed and we have a required side setback of 8 feet. We would want that same setback to apply to any building in the village, so that the intents and purposes of the existing building regulations are met. Now, I'm not speaking about what policy Martin's additions will find. I'm just saying this is the thoughts of some of my other clients, some of the other municipalities.
There's a question, what's your question?
So my question is that what you're saying is that the Montgomery County could wipe out all of our standards and just put new standards in that allow multifamily, triplex to do better. I mean, I can barely
Not yet.
expand my
Not-
driveway.
not
I
yet.
can't even get my driveway expanded.
Mhm.
So you're telling me that this is why I'm confused. I can't even get my driveway expanded without multiple variances.
Mhm.
I mean, I can't, I didn't want to do it because it takes so much work. So I don't understand what the problem is here.
Mhm. Well, it's more of as a kind of
Yeah.
what's it
So,
called? Drive 2050. It's like a,
2050.
so it's sort of,
Or
we're talking about
2024.
2050 and it's 2024. And this is
Right.
government.
Yeah.
So
Well,
by all
well, they-
means,
the
move at a glacial
Thrive
pace.
Montgomery 2050 is the general plan
Right.
for the next 25 years.
Mhm.
But the county is now rolling out attainable housing strategies.
Strategy.
We might see a ZTA
Mhm.
to implement planning staff's
Mhm.
changes in the next 6 months or so.
Ron, is there any?
And when I say ZTA, that's a zoning text amendment. So the Montgomery County Council will likely make these zoning changes we're talking about tonight by a zoning text amendment, meaning the county will amend the county zoning code to allow additional uses in the R60 zone. Right now, the zoning code says in the R60 zone, you can have single family and you can have duplexes under optional method development. And we'll have a zoning text amendment likely that will say, in addition, you may also have, as a matter of right, duplexes, triplexes without optional method development if the council adopts planning staff's recommendation. Sorry, Arthur, go ahead.
Which we're going to discuss
Yeah,
later.
quick question.
Mhm.
Has there been any discussion or evolution of thought of what unreasonable restrictions might mean?
No, and that's something that we probably want to go back to the state and have clarified. You know, I have thought about that issue quite a bit, and if we take the Attorney General's explanation, legislative analyst explanation, that really what is meant is to eliminate de facto obstacles, you know, then I think it's rather easy to define, but I am concerned that as currently written, you know, it's rather broad. Now,
So
as
if,
currently
if
written
there,
under the governor's bill, there are
Right.
4 examples of when it's unreasonable. And unreasonable means if you negatively impact the viability of an affordable housing development, or the degree of affordability, the allowable density. So, I mean, I can give you an example, but won't do that now.
okay, so if there are existing building codes such as we have, not a reaction to some new plans, but existing ones, could they be unreasonable just by what they're calling for now, even if they were designed before these ideas were put forward?
Well, I do have some thoughts on that. I'd rather give you those thoughts in closed
Okay.
session, because I wouldn't want
Okay.
that advice used against us.
Good.
But
That's
I think it would not be a de facto denial. It would not be unreasonable if we applied the same height and setback requirements to any buildings. I mean,
right.
under
Okay.
current law, we don't have land use authority. We can't currently dictate how many dwelling units can be inside of a building. So from that standpoint, we don't now have the authority to say single family is okay, multifamily is not okay. What
Right.
we have the authority to do is impose setbacks, height limits, lot coverage, etc., to prevent the looming of structures, to preserve open spaces, streetscape character of the neighborhood. So through that lens, you know, it does seem reasonable to say we don't care who's inside the building, but we want it to be set back 8 feet from the side lot line because we want space between houses.
Good. Thank you.
Any
My
other
pleasure.
questions, any other comments? Okay, does that help?
It did.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay.
I think I'm gonna make a decision. I think I'm gonna bump council comments a little later down the
Good.
way. I'm gonna move on to the next item, if that's okay, if there aren't any objections. It was my idea anyway, so I'll explain it later. So,
Right.
moving on, okay. Then that means we are going to look at approving the June 20th council meeting minutes from June 20th, 2024. Have all council members had a chance to
Right,
review?
I had read them and
Okay.
I moved to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
A second.
Andrew seconds, all in favor?
Aye,
Aye.
moving on.
I just want to share, so I am going to say aye to approve, but I do want to just put something out for our chair and other council members to consider, and our manager is, while I'm voting to approve, there were definitely a few things that I wanted to provide as edits to this month's minutes. We had a fairly, and Andrew may recall, we had a fairly rigorous and important discussion on the exit of the Brookville shops onto Turner. And there was a report, and there is a summary here, but I felt that there were a couple points that were made which were not included, which I'll talk about in the manager's report. So this is kind of innocuous in that I'm not making this as a big issue, but I do want to share that I think that we've gotten to a point in our monthly meeting minutes where we have some sort of unwritten policy about that council members should not be making any sort of content, only typo or
No,
Mm-hmm.
grammatical.
there's plenty, like, I often send in comments and amendments when I see it.
Okay, so if that's the case, I just want to share, like in this case, there were definitely a couple points that I
Okay.
wanted to put in. So going forward, I'll innocuously share. I didn't do it because I didn't want to rock the boat, because I know in the past sometimes I
You
have.
can do, I don't know when you send them out, yesterday, I think. I read it and
Yeah.
make the comment right there.
Awesome.
I
Liz?
mean, I guess that's more of a question for village staff. I mean, do you think if we could produce the minutes, be earlier? I know it's like they don't have enough to do. If we could get the minutes out maybe, from like tonight in the next 72 hours or a week. And then we, as council members, had a good week or so to
To
review
review.
them, add our edits, and then that would give maybe another
Yeah.
week to kind of recirculate. I know it's a lot, but
It's the same amount of work,
it
just
is.
shifting in time.
It just gives everybody a little more time.
Yeah.
But that's really, that would impact the village staff, and I want to, I'm cognizant of that. So it's just an idea.
And I just want to share, I'm going to borrow Ron's terminology, I believe, the reasonable standard. So when I say reasonable, I mean like maybe a sentence that I may want to, add. This is not about the idea we're going to drop a couple paragraphs or something like that. So, but anyway, okay.
Okay.
No, thank you, Jeff. Did you see, did Susan vote on the minutes? I didn't have her on my screen, so I just want to make sure.
She dropped off the call. I
Oh,
don't see her anymore.
is she off?
Yeah, she said she was going to try
She
to
was-
stay
she
for an
would say,
hour,
okay.
but she had a
Alright.
meeting.
So you had three hands, okay.
I do want to just share, since you were, I know you may be leaving, is that there are a number of residents, some who are on this call, but others who aren't, whether it's here in Village of Martin's Additions or elsewhere, who have been writing directly to folks like the chair, Andrew Friedson, and others expressing their concern about this. So I'm just sharing that, that there have been,
For the
that,
notes.
so that there's nothing that precludes anyone
think
from
he's making an
expressing their
addition.
thoughts. And we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but
Yeah.
there have been folks who have shared things about this
Yes.
topic, and it's a very, very, sensitive
It is, it
and
is.
aggressive, and it's
Mhm.
bringing out a lot of emotions for a lot of
It
people.
is. And I might circle back to you on
Mhm.
council comments on that. So, but we're gonna move on to the next agenda item. This is a discussion of the FY 25 committees and task forces. So before we kick off the discussion, another big collective thank you to all the residents who served on the committees and task forces of FY 24. We appreciate your time and dedication to this community, as evidenced in all the annual reports that were provided at the end of last month. But, looking ahead, we will be sending out a call for volunteers to fill our 3 standing committees, which are the in FY 25, which is the ethics, election, and CEC. But we also need to discuss whether to extend 2 task force committees that were established last year, initially for a 1-year run. And those are the Anti-Semitism Awareness Education Task Force, as well as the Stormwater and Groundwater Task Force. So I'd like to open up discussion on that, but I'd like to discuss each task force separately because they're quite different. So let's start with the Anti-Semitism Awareness Education Task Force, and whether there should be a motion to be made to extend that task force 1 more year. I know we have some
Yeah.
liaisons to the committee. If you want to add something, Andrew, is that a hand raise or?
Finger,
Andrew,
hand, whatever
okay.
you want to call it. Yes, thank you. And congratulations again to you, Katie. I think you're doing a great job chairing today's meeting, and I look forward to serving under you as your vice chair, as your humble vice chair. I just wanted to, and I unfortunately have to leave in about 40 minutes, but I just wanted to chime in on both task forces. But as we're discussing one at a time, I feel pretty strongly that that the Anti-Semitism Awareness Task Force should continue on for another fiscal year, at least another fiscal year, given that I think there remains a great urgency and a continued prevalence throughout the country and in our county and in our community of concern related to anti-Semitism. So I just wanted to make that comment and support the continuation of that task force. So I'm happy to, if we vote on that tonight, happy to vote on that. And I feel equally strongly about the Stormwater Task Force as well. I think that urgency isn't going anywhere. It's continuing to be 5-alarm fire, given the climate, extreme weather and all that. So I'm gonna go on mute, but I just wanted to mention those two
That's fine.
items.
I'll put you down for a twofer. That's fine. Okay. Yeah, Arthur. your
Yeah,
thoughts?
I am against continuing it
Okay.
for a couple of reasons. One is that I have heard nothing but negative responses from neighbors and community members on a number of grounds.
Mhm.
The main one being why anti-Semitism, why not anti a lot of other folks,
Mhm.
where there are issues. And is this particularly favoring one group and disfavoring others? So that I'm against it. And in talking earlier today with Susan, she also is against renewing it.
Mhm.
I don't have her proxy because we don't use proxies here, but that was her view as well.
Yeah, she did send me
Oh, she
an
did,
email
okay.
on, then she raised the same points. But that is been brought to our attention that, you know, we do represent all residents. And so that is a point, or a counterpoint to continuing.
And I would say I haven't heard
Mhm.
a single community member voicing support to me.
A committee, of the task force?
Yeah, for continuing,
continuing.
for to begin with, or
Okay.
for continuing.
Mhm. Jeff, you served with Andrew as co-liaisons, right, to the, did you wanna, what are your thoughts on?
Sure, I'd be
Yeah.
delighted to chime in. Well, first of all, like all our committees, and I see that Naomi is here, just really grateful to their service. I know that there was this task force worked really hard, and if you look at their accomplishments, which are many, and I think that they were really extremely dedicated to doing the best that they could with limited resources. They pulled off a really wonderful event that brought in well over 100 screens in January.
I support that. I totally agree with Jeff on that point.
And a number of things which they've done. And I would just counter to Arthur's thoughts or comments is any association I've had has been very positive. I know there's been questions, but there's also a bit maybe of an education component, which is this was done not because VMA pulled it out of thin air, it's that there was a county resolution. And so with that said, I think that perhaps that could also address it. So the long story short is, like Andrew, I definitely support to extend it a year. I think with the success that they had with their event, I think they're already thinking about having another one. And I think that given the success of the first one, I also believe this is not a learning moment where perhaps in the annual survey, we could perhaps have a question or two that might be related to anti-Semitism, the task force, and just get a general sort of understanding of where residents feel. And I think, again, given what they've accomplished, what I think that they can still accomplish in the times we're in, the resolution, as far as I know, with the county is still open. It sort of is a no-brainer because Arthur, you've shared in the past that sometimes it takes a little bit of time for sea legs. So I'd like to perhaps see, where this goes. But like I also always talk about is sometimes also at some point you may run the course of something and it's time to stand down. But I don't feel that's the case. I feel we can do some questions in the survey. I feel the accomplishments that they've had, and I think they'll pull off another very successful event in the coming year. I feel that extending it makes sense.
Okay. All right, well, why don't we, I'm gonna make a motion to continue the, let me get the wording down, Anti-Semitism Awareness and Education Task Force for one more year. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, that's 3. And then
Opposed?
opposed?
Okay.
Arthur, and then I guess Susan's not present, but yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for the feedback. And so yeah, we'll look forward to announcing the task force again and putting a call out for volunteers when we do our general call. And so then that brings us to stormwater and groundwater task force, which you served as
Yes.
liaison on.
And
You'd
I,
like to-
yes, here I
go
will
ahead.
recommend that it be continued. They're in the middle of their activities.
Mhm.
They've just got a survey done and will be presenting that to an engineer for analysis. So they're right in the middle of their work right now. So I propose that they be continued for another year.
Okay. All right. Jeff, did you want to?
Well, why don't we can vote on it? I just had a comment.
Okay.
That it's not to get in the way of voting whether to
Okay.
extend or not, but I did
Okay.
want to comment.
Andrew, did you have any yeah, well, you already said,
already
he
said,
already
he
said,
already-
that's right, that's right. He was he was very efficient at that, okay. Well, then I guess, I'll make a motion to extend, for one more year, the, stormwater and groundwater
Right.
task
I
force.
will second that and vote for it.
Okay, all in favor?
Okay.
My
And-
one comment on
Yes,
this
mhm.
is, and Arthur, I know you're on top of it and we have Ron, but with all this happening around the rezoning and how it could cascade around.
Cascade is a good word. Yes.
Yes, water.
So I just putting this in perspective
Yeah.
of this could really, I don't know what the right word is, but let's put it this way. It's good to have this task force and they may have to expand their scope just in terms of understanding what it may take to actually the infrastructure and everything else
Right,
with pending changes.
Okay.
yeah. Permeable surfaces is a key issue here.
Okay, so, then that's that. The goal is
Good.
then we're gonna send out, a call as soon as possible, so that we can announce who is serving on the committees in FY 25.
Get them and put them to work.
September meeting, yes.
Right.
Yeah, Liz,
Get
it's
'em
gonna
to
be
work.
a call for volunteers.
We'll see.
I'm looking at you. Okay, all right. So, well, speaking of committees, that moves us on to our next item, which is a review of FY 24 election committee recommendations. The annual report, was produced by the members of the FY 24 election committee. It provides 9 recommendations to council that be possibly implemented in future election plans. So the question is to implement or not to implement. I want to thank the most recent election committee members and their committee chair, Marty Langland, for their commitment and hard work of the smooth process of last year's election cycle. But yeah, there are 9 here in the packet. Have we all had a chance to review? And this is a chance to hear your thoughts going forward on these recommendations.
Yeah, let me start. I explicitly asked the committee to put these forward because all of these points had been in the original draft of the election procedures. And we felt that these issues went beyond procedural. They were adding new policy. They called for amendments to the charter and to the code. I thought these do not belong in a procedural document, but the committee had thought long about them, and many of them were good ideas. I said, make them separate. We will consider them explicitly as changes to ordinance, changes to the charter. So here they are, and we have them here tonight. Having said that, I've looked over each one of them, and I personally do not recommend moving forward with any of them. I think we've had a chance to look at it. We've had views expressed by our village council to the council, and I've looked at it carefully. So in my own personal view, I don't want to speak to members of the committee, of the council. I recommend that not going forward with these, but that's just one view.
Well, for one quick question,
Yeah.
Michael, is it possible to share them on the screen? They're in the packet.
They were in the packet.
Can try.
But only if it's, it might help for point of reference for people on.
Page 4 of the packet.
Page 4 of the
Everyone should
packet,
have.
and if anybody wants to pull that up, yeah.
Probably could within short order, but. Keep the discussion.
Okay, that's fine. How about Jeff? Did you want to, or Andrew? Have you had a chance to review? And do you have any comments on the recommendations?
I did review. but I really don't have any comments at this point. I think I probably would align myself with Arthur and his reaction. I think there's some really good ideas. I'm not sure that this is a way to proceed, but that's all I got for now.
Okay, well, Jeff, did you want to?
Sure, I
Comment?
first, as I shared about with the other committees, I think that they worked extremely hard. I think there's a lot of thought behind this. I also, and this isn't necessarily the place to get into the details, but I believe it's been stated quite frequently that there's been debate about whether there's an urgency or not, but at the end of the day, it's up to the council to decide whether or not we want to adopt any sum or none. And I've looked at them, and I Katie, it's up to you if you wanted to go down, sequentially and sort of do a yay, nay sort of thing, but I take the other approach. I really feel they're all quite reasonable, and I don't see any reason why we shouldn't consider them. There's only one that when I look at it, I feel that maybe some more discussion needs to be put into this around, because workload, and I know that it's not just last year, but in prior years, the relationship number 7, the relationship between our staff and the committee. And just how we want to kind of, if there are guardrails of just how do we ensure about the workload. And again, I don't think that we can get into that, but I think it's just more discussion and having an understanding from our staff and just what's the best way. Because it is a little awkward. It's like all these dotted lines where our staff are employees and they, sort of, they report to our council. And then during this period, you have a committee that sort of takes on this authority. And so we just want to, I think, come up with a solution that it's reasonable and everyone can work. But other than that, and again, I'm not trying to be adversarial, but I look at these things. I appreciate that there has been statements about whether or not there's an urgency, but I feel that there's really no reason for us not to take them up. And I support, I think, most, if not all of them. I don't see any reason why we shouldn't. And that's how I feel.
No, I do as well. Andrew, are you?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, and I'm sorry, I was just had someone come into the room when I was starting to speak. So I did want to add that I thought that the election committee did a great job and they worked really hard. And it was a flawlessly run election with the help of the council staff, so the village staff. So I really want to commend all that hard work by the election committee. And I wanted to also, kind of piggyback on what Jeff is saying. I think most all of these ideas are really solid. Some I like more than others. And I think as we continue this discussion, and I guess I had a parliamentary inquiry, it looked like it was just a discussion today, not a vote today. Maybe you correct me if I'm wrong. I just want to make sure that all council members are present for a vote.
That is important. Yeah. Well, yeah, how I was going to look at it is I didn't really want to make this an all or nothing decision. I thought we would go through each recommendation and just as a consensus say whether to recommend that moving forward to the FY25 plan. Should we table it for next month?
Well, it does say for future council consideration. So it doesn't say for council vote today. So that's the only. I want to make sure that we're clear on how we're proceeding today.
Okay, well, why don't we do, instead of going, could we, let's, do I need to make a motion or can we just agree to put that on? We're gonna put it on next, I'm sorry, the next meeting's agenda. Yes. And yes.
The only thing I put in, I think that this won't change what you're proposing is. So we won't have a meeting in August. Our next one will be September. There will be a call for nominations, and I don't believe that the committees will be actively stood up until that September meeting anyway. So I don't believe delaying is going to have an impact. And again, I don't want to delay. I've already shared my piece, but I would encourage, if we're going to have this then as some vote, maybe at that September meeting.
Okay.
Maybe encourage, I mean, again, recognizing all the hard work, there are 9 recommendations and that, as we go through it, maybe as folks look at it, maybe there are some that we can agree on would be good and others, maybe it's not the right time. I just encourage that because I think in the general advice that we've heard, it is a council decision. It wasn't like there was anything that said you shouldn't do this. It was just more of these aren't necessarily urgent at this time, but
Yeah.
we could settle longstanding policy matters that by doing this, we may not have to go back to it again at some point.
No, that's a good point. And we are down council members. So I would like the council to all be present when we go through this. I did see 2 members, a member of the election committee with a hand raised. Do we have a comment from the election committee since is this their suggestions? Was it Naomi, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did.
Thank you for your service on both committees this year.
So I want to ask Arthur,
Yes.
you summarily object to all of these recommendations, including the one that recommends that we insist on convening a 5-member committee versus a 3-member committee. And can you tell me what that reasoning is for your objection?
There's not, right. There's nothing that says we cannot have a 5-member committee. It says at least 3, which allows 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. So I didn't think that it requires amending the charter to do it. All we have to do is appoint 5 people.
So no, I want to know, why do you object to at least 5 versus at least 3? What is your reasoning?
There's two reasons. One, it involves changing the charter, which is a cumbersome and process that takes several months to do. We've changed it, so that's not an issue. The second is that manning a 5, that's the wrong word. Finding 5 members all the time can be a challenge. If we have 5 members and 1 leaves, that leaves 4, and we don't have a legal committee. So having 3 gives us some room there to maintaining continuity of committee operations.
Well, I think it's subject for more review. So why don't we
Yeah.
just put it on the September?
Just
Oh,
administratively.
yes.
So
go
we're
ahead.
postponing it to the next meeting. That
Yeah.
seems fine by me.
Yeah.
I would encourage the
Mhm.
council to go one by one. And then
Yes.
what these are recommendations back to the FY25
Mhm.
committee to
Mhm,
include in their election plan.
mhm.
So
There's
well,
other
depending on
things-
what it was, if it was a charter amendment or a code amendment,
Right,
then it would have to go back to the council.
Mhm.
yeah.
But it would still require this year's committee to incorporate that into their plan. So
Not
that's
if
what
it's,
you would be recommending.
not if it's a code, I mean, not if it's a charter or code amendment. They don't,
Right.
they don't,
Then in that case, it would come back to
Right.
the council.
Right. And I mean, it should probably be noted that if we take this pause, that might impact, whether committee members want to return or not to that committee, but I think we should all be present and we should go through each one. So we'll do in September. Okay. All right. Oh,
May I
go ahead.
just
Yes.
also point out, again, I know, Katie, you're coming off of being the
am,
liaison.
yes.
And Michael, obviously as the manager, I don't want to overemphasize this more than is
Mhm.
needed, but the number 7, I mean, if you feel like some input, might help us understand this relationship between the committee and the staff and
Mhm.
how we could improve it, I think that,
Oh, number
we
7.
welcome that, of
Okay.
course.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll take it up a little down the road. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And next up is what we were.
Katie? Katie?
Oh, yes. Mhm.
Can I
Okay,
say
we-
something briefly? before you
Yes,
move
go ahead,
on?
Marty. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. And I want to thank all the council members for speaking to these issues. These are basically best practices and they were unanimously recommended by the committee that went through all the regulations with a fine tooth comb. Some of them are just pragmatic. For example, the 2-week limit on having a rerun election in the current charter goes way back to 1985, and it's simply not doable with a mail vote election. But I want to specifically talk about number 7, the one that Jeff raised, because our committee throughout the year, and Katie, I know you can vouch for this, we were really concerned about trying not to load extra work on Michael, to try to put it back on the committee to do most of the actual operational management of the election, which certainly was the practice in my previous experiences as the committee chair prior to 2020. And to have a clear, bright line there so that Michael was not being asked to do things that were really the committee responsibility, or that the committee should properly handle. And I think that that's an important thing there. And I think one of the things that maybe would be helpful, and Michael, I'm asking you this question, I think, would you like to sit down and kind of work out a protocol to figure out what's reasonable here? Because we certainly needed you to handle the contract, but we didn't need you, for example, to have Michael be the one who, certainly shouldn't be deciding who gets a ballot. I mean, that's an election committee responsibility. So anyway, we could work out a protocol there, and I think that might be helpful, Michael, if you're willing to spend a little time with me, we could do that. The others are just pragmatic. Things like having the forum be mandatory was in the regs before. I don't know why that got taken out as a mandatory requirement last year. It should be mandatory because that's a very important part of voter information. The same thing with the Dropbox. If it's good for the voters, we ought to do it. These are sort of no-brainers in terms of voter access to information, access to voting, making voting easier for people. And the committee, again, I do want to say, you had people who really drilled down and looked at how elections should be run on a local basis, recommended all of these. I think it would be very useful on number 7 to actually have a protocol, and I'd be happy to help with that. I'd also be glad to answer any questions from people. Arthur, in terms of the first 2 there, where we're talking about having, the provisions in place for when we have to do a recount, or when, a referendum, what a referendum would require. Those, again, are standard components of election regulations at the county and state level. Actually, nationwide, they're in election regs. And they don't necessarily need to be in the charter. They need to be somewhere in the regulations. Otherwise, this goes, Arthur, you and I have had many talks over the years about not making Martin's Additions vulnerable, to really be protective here. And I think you and I share that very protective sense about our village. And the numbers 1 and 2 there about having a defined provision for referendums, a defined provisions for when you have to do a recount, that protects us from liability. That protects us from turmoil on the elections. You need to have a procedure in place before those situations come up, not try to ad hoc it at the moment. So those I see as very important protections for Martin's Additions, which is why the committee put those at the top of the list. They protect us from possible litigation, and certainly protect us from the kind of turmoil that we don't ever want to have again on our elections. So I will be happy to talk with any of the council members about this. Ron, if you have questions, I'd be happy to discuss this with you as well. The committee gave this a great deal of attention, and I really want to give my own appreciation to the council members who support this, because all 9 of these are important elements of running a smooth election. And Andrew, thank you for saying this year's election was flawless. It really was a nice relief not to have problems this year. And thank you for the compliments to the committee. And Michael, thank you for your support.
All right.
Any
Well, thank you,
questions?
Marty. I don't see any questions, so we'll move on, but we'll revisit this next month. So the next item on the agenda is an update on the planning board recommendations to our county council regarding attainable housing strategies, which we were discussing earlier. And this will include also a discussion on a technical amendment to the state code. So just for a little background, the council voted to move into a closed session at the end of last month's council meeting to receive legal advice regarding the issue in building regulation per the Open Meetings Act. And then we will also be discussing the addition of adding our signature as a municipality on a letter to the state delegation requesting a technical amendment to the state code. And just to summarize what that amendment is, it seeks to confirm that municipalities have the authority to regulate all residential housing types within their corporate boundaries without impeding any specific housing type. So all of the relevant materials have been included in the packet tonight, and we can discuss more with Ron. And as you will see in the letter that's been included in the packet, the neighboring municipalities are all included and invited to sign. But I should raise that there are issues. There is about the current wording of the letter, amongst members of differing councils that I just referred to, the different municipalities. And here at home, I mean, I know Jeff Lander has suggested changes to the letter. So should we hear maybe from Ron first and then Jeff? With that, Ron, did you want to?
And
I
Ron
don't
would
think I have
also-
anything else to add. I mean, unless you have additional questions.
Did I summarize it? Okay.
Yes,
Correctly.
yeah, perfectly.
Thank you, Ron. Okay, okay. All right, well, Jeff, I know you've been looking into this.
Well, the only thing I'd add, and so I know there's two pieces here. So if there are updates, and I know that Jean was here earlier, there are going to be these information sessions. There's one, I guess, coming next week, and then there is I think an MNL one that I may attend at the end of this month. I think it's maybe August I'll look, but it's the end of the month, so I may go to that. But the bottom line is, so I think there's two pieces. One, what can residents perhaps participate in? Is there any, because we know Kensington and others have actually been sort of out in front of this and sharing, for example, the various county meetings and the council meetings and the planning board meetings. And, so if residents wanted to go, they could, and they could voice their opinion. So that's one part of it. The other part of it, which I'm not sure if there is an intention, and I'm not saying that it is, but it could be something to think about. And I don't know, it sounds like the train is moving fast, is, do we have any intention as a council to send a letter to Andrew Friedson and the council, and we'd have to think on what grounds. And I share my thoughts on this, which are, it's not so much the idea of we would be providing a letter that would be against or for the rezoning, because I don't think that is the place where we are right now. But I think it's very well understood that there are deficiencies in the committee's recommended plan. First, there was no outreach specifically to the municipalities like Village of Martin's Addition and others that would be directly affected by the changes in the R60. And I'm not making this up. This is something that the county council executive Ehrlich has stressed in his public statements of, how could you move forward on something like this without having discussions with the very communities that you're expecting to change? And the other piece, which also I think is a nothing burger in terms of voicing, is the planning committee's report itself does not go into any depth on technical or engineering data of the possible ramifications of, like I shared, what happens if all of a sudden in the catchment area of 325 houses, 1,000, that could double or quadruple, and then recognizing we're just struggling with infrastructure with what we have. So I'm putting out there as just, again, I don't want to prolong it, but I think there are grounds of innocuously just saying, maybe we need to pause, or, what we would like to do is work with the council in terms of even invite Friedson here, or we could do it as a community with the other municipalities to say, please come and let's have this dialogue with you as one. And then the other would be, we would really, again, we could even share that we're looking to invest money through our infrastructure, our groundwater task forces. We are looking to invest in this to do engineering technical studies, and maybe we can invite the county to either want to participate, but help us even expand it to include these other types of dwellings. So I'm not trying to prolong this, but I just wanted to share, I think there's room for us, at least on the record. They may ignore us, but just on the record in a very responsible way to say, hey, you know, we'd like to understand this better. Please come. And also we would like to work with you to have more technical data to understand the ramifications. So if we were to write anything, I would want to do it on those grounds, not in a way that's antagonistic but just, you know, hey, we don't have this and we can't even explain it to our residents what's going to happen. And before you go carte blanche, let's do it. So there's that. And I'm sorry. And the last piece on this, which I'll just bring up. So I'm parsing the county stuff, right? What's coming up in terms of meetings, and then the possibility of a note that we could write as a council to say to the you know, please, we would really encourage you to pause or whatever, so you can consider these factors. And then in terms of the actual letter itself, I just wanted to share, and again, the timeline, I believe, so July 26th is when we could perhaps provide feedback to the mayor of the town of Chevy Chase, I believe, Irene. And the reason why I'm sharing it, and again, I'm not trying to wordsmith but when I look at the letter that's in the packet on page 6, the area that I feel not quite confident in, and again, this is getting into the weeds and it could be taken offline, and I welcome Ron and others' thoughts, is there are 2 sentences. One is, it is important to note, this is in the 3rd paragraph, it is important to note that we are not seeking zoning authority, nor do we intend to prohibit or impede the construction of multifamily housing in our municipalities. I share this with, again, and I know that I've shared it with others outside this meeting. That to me personally and professionally, I feel we're sort of giving up and we're going a bit far. Now, I understand that the state delegates, you know, they want to see a real commanding sentence that we're not going to be impeding, and I get it. The only thing I want to share, and again, this is getting into the real minutia. Remember, that's 26 is just feedback. It's not, because at the end of the day, Irene, who's the mayor, is collecting feedback from everyone. So we're actually going to get another letter in August or September to vote on.
Right.
So right now, this is just an open call.
The
for feedback.
revisions or comments to the letter are being accepted till July 26th.
And this is my punchline. And again, so I don't have the exact phraseology, but I'm just sharing as an example. For me personally or professionally, when I look at this, I kind of see the wording and I say, you know what, I feel that we could massage it a bit and say, we are not seeking zoning authority to prohibit or impede construction of multifamily housing, because we're not seeking zoning authority. So that is just a very straightforward statement. That is, we are not, and very specific. Because right now it separates the idea we're not seeking zoning authority, but then it says, nor do we intend on prohibiting or impeding construction. And I say to myself, you know, that may go a little bit beyond what we need to do. We can say very clearly and concisely, we are not seeking zoning authority on multifamily housing in our municipalities. And then retain that second sentence. Our collective goal is to support multifamily housing by ensuring it harmonizes with existing family housing. So I'm putting that out. I'm not expecting everyone to absorb that and massage it, but I just want to share. I feel there's a little bit of a tweaking there, because if I look at the list of those who are signing, I feel there isn't a one cookie cutter approach. Like City of Tacoma Park is very different than us. And I feel that, and I know Katie knows this, we had an informal, friendly chat, not representing anyone, with Irene, and she was very open to feedback, recognizing others are going to be sending feedback. And I just feel there isn't much risk if we could come to a reasonable conclusion that maybe there are some things about the letter, again, are just around that piece. So we're not giving up the possibility of advocating, because what happens, for example, the county approves this R60, and it's really a very aggressive approach. And then I just feel that we want to have a little bit of room where some of these others who are on this letter, it's already past them. Like they already have multifamily, or they are in a zone that is, designated, like if you're within very close to Connecticut, for them, that's not an issue, right? They don't have to worry. Anyway, let me pause. I've rambled, but the bottom line is, I think if we could provide an update that isn't, going to break our staff, but how we could share maybe some upcoming meetings and links. And then if there is room by the 26th, if we could work with Ron and other members of the council who would feel comfortable, if we do have just a suggested edit, they could reject it, which is fine. But just so that at least we could say to our residents that we stood behind you. And then third, I'm sorry, do we come up with a statement or a note that is innocuous to the county council asking for the possibility of working with them on generating some technical data, and would they come and actually listen to our residents because they need more information? Over.
Well, just one
yes.
quick response. That phrase that you have questions on is meant to tell our state representatives that that the change to the state code that we are seeking, just one word, is not meant to avoid multifamily housing. So this is to reassure them.
Right.
This is not a way to get around it. And so that's the reason that it's in there. So it's not caving in advance. It is to try to get our state legislators to agree with our goal.
May I ask?
Yeah.
We've just, again, I appreciate all the time and deference. Maybe I could pose a question to Ron. Just his thoughts is, maybe the other way of turning it around here is, again, I'm looking at this as an advocate and not a lawyer. And I'm just wondering, Ron, when you hear what I'm saying about phraseology, could we massage it? But I guess at the end of the day, if we were to sign this without any changes right now, and then the county, again, because that is a moving target right now in terms of what they're doing. If for whatever reason they did come out with something that really was very aggressive and we did not feel comfortable, would this in any way, shape, or form prohibit us to advocate against its implementation, which would include multifamily housing until said issues are done? Because we know in Virginia, we know that there is pending litigation that may occur. So maybe that would settle it for me. If it would not prevent us, then I'm fine.
Sure. No, it would not prevent you. In fact, under common law, the council cannot, by contract or agreement, attempt to restrict future councils. You may have a completely different mindset in the future, and what you put in this letter isn't binding on future councils. And just because you would be representing that with respect to our building regulations, we're not proposing to implement de facto denials, it doesn't mean you can't lobby the county council for whatever it is you desire in the implementation of ZTAs at the county level, if that makes sense.
And last comment, I promise I'll pause myself on this is, and I appreciate all this very thoughtful discussion and time on this matter is, so the other kind of hole I go down is we sign it, it gets circulated, it's on the desk of Friedson
It's
and
not-
our friends.
It's going to the legislature.
No, I
Going to
know.
the state,
appeal.
yeah.
Saying they'll
If it
see it,
is.
right? And they'll
Okay.
say, aha,
Okay.
VMA, what are
Support.
you folks talking about? You just said that we don't intend, and, so I'm just trying to understand the ramifications of how it could be used against us.
Mm.
If we say something that basically is saying, hey, go for it, folks. We're not going to be against it in any way.
I guess, yeah, like what is the symbolism of the signature, signing this letter is the, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, Ultimately, I don't have strong feelings on the wording. I think that it is important that there be one letter signed by all municipalities. So if all municipalities can get on the same page as to what the appropriate phraseology is, yeah, that would be great.
Mhm.
And I don't know if this might give the council comfort as well. You know, I think the way Jeff reworks the sentence, I think works, but you know, I don't know if all the other municipalities would agree. I think that how Mayor Lane has written it in the initial draft directly addresses, as Arthur noted, comments that were made with respect to the governor's attainable housing bill.
Mhm.
And if we just look at that sentence as written now, we're not seeking zoning authority, which we can't anyway, because under the Regional District Act, we have no zoning authority. And I don't see the state overturning the Regional District Act. Nor do we intend to prohibit or impede the construction of multifamily housing in our municipalities. From a zoning standpoint, we can't do so. So, you know, I don't think we're giving up anything there because we already don't have that authority.
Hmm.
As a matter of zoning, we can't dictate how property is used. We can't currently dictate whether single family, dual family, or multifamily is permissible. But, you know, I know, as Arthur stated, what Mayor Lane wants to do here is try and get past the anticipated hurdle that when we ask for 2509 to be amended, for the word single family to be stricken, are any members of the General Assembly going to be concerned? Oh, they're only asking this because they want to impose de facto requirements that will prohibit multifamily. And so, you know, got to think about how do you get over that obstacle?
Hmm.
I think Jeff's language works. I think the initial language works. And from my legal standpoint, I don't think that sentence results in us giving up anything because we don't have that authority now.
To begin with, yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
That's good.
I appreciate it. So the only thing I would say as my conclusion on it, again, thanks for the time. And what I'm happy to do, I'll leave it up to our chair. And I know, you know, so there's a 26 kind of moment of getting feedback if
The
we
deadline,
have it.
right, if you have changes.
So
edits.
what I'll simply do,
Mhm.
and I'm happy to share it,
Mhm.
and you can decide how, if not, but I'll just share some thoughts on maybe some feedback.
Mhm.
Recognizing this is not in any way, shape, or form saying that we voted on anything, that we've, you know, because again, we're gonna end up getting something back. Now,
Mhm.
maybe there's no changes, but maybe there will be. So it's just an opportunity to say, is there anything about this that we want to provide input on?
Right.
I'm not saying that anyone on this council, perhaps besides myself, wants to see any suggested edits, but I'll share it and then I'll leave it to you to decide how you want to go.
I mean, it's just like I think you were telling the residents earlier, you know, if they want to reach out to, you know,
Yeah.
our local reps. I mean, you can certainly suggest your edits. Now, this is a protocol question, Arthur, I'm going to ask you this because you've signed letters before as a municipality. So, you know, Jeff so he knows Irene and he's met with Irene. Does he just submit his edits directly as a council member, but not necessarily on behalf of the whole?
Well, yeah, we've already voted last month to approve sending this letter.
That was
So you can put our
one.
name on it. Jeff is perfectly free to send Irene an edit saying with your explanation.
Yeah, but yeah, it would be, you would
Yeah.
state, I guess, just as a
Right.
council member, but
Yeah.
not on behalf of the entire
Right.
council. Okay, that's fine, yeah.
Yeah.
And I
You're-
met Irene and
You're
I think
you're a
Irene was
citizen
open to
with the
Jeff's-
rights of any other citizen.
Right, and Irene was open to Jeff's feedback and,
Right.
yeah. And, it was a very informative meeting with her and, in fact, we talked about, I had a question about a structure that would be kind of what we're on par with what we're talking about. It's located over on Wall Street near the Bethesda Target, and I think it's a quad And I was just trying to, and it's right next to a residential neighborhood or right
Right.
abutting, and I was just trying to visualize like how something like that would look
Right.
and where would it go in this neighborhood? So, probably long way, maybe not even, possibility, but interesting. Ron, did you have any more to add? Thank you, so much for staying on.
No, nothing else to add. Although, well, I don't know if it's worth adding or not, but I had heard from at least one other community that may even like to see the letter go the other way and actually promote multifamily more. So important to keep in mind that there's a vast diversity of point of view.
Multiple points of view.
Letter tries to
Delicate issue, yeah.
take it down the middle.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's why it'll be interesting to see when Irene gets back to us with all the feedback. Does it change at all or, yeah, so, okay. And then the final, just closing the loop also, it doesn't sound like, again, because we have 3 of 5 remaining is, do we feel, and again, Ron, I mean, any thoughts, but I mean, should we be considering a note to the county council? Is anyone else putting in the lines that I shared of not being against something, but we
individual
feel
member?
that there needs to be more information,
think that-
inviting them to come in. That's
A
what-
county, a general meeting with the local municipality sounds like it could be useful and
Yes.
work.
Yeah,
They would
yeah,
much more
that-
likely to come in and talk to 5 or 6 towns rather than just us.
Yeah.
Ron?
Yeah, I think that's definitely right. I think all the municipalities now that I represent, those who have apprised me of what they're doing, everyone's in the same position as you in informational gathering. And I think the general consensus is, let's get some folks from planning staff in here to talk to us, to explain their recommendation further about the impacts. And then at the county council level, you can submit comments once you have that meeting once you fully understand everything, or you could wait for the ZTA to come out and then respond to the ZTA.
Yeah.
I could give you some more comments in closed session if you're keen on getting legal advice.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So should we just provide an update after the July 26th collection of edits? We'll just add another, we'll circle back to this in September.
Right.
Yeah, we should have an update then. Okay.
And just putting in context of that, the county council seems to be moving at light speed. So putting in perspective, by September, there may or may not be actions taken by them, though I've also heard some whispers that there may be a process that they will still follow. So it seems a little ambiguous of the timeline, but there's some, on one hand, folks are saying there's a blitzkrieg.
Right.
On the other hand, we're seeing there may be a little bit of a pause. So I think it sounds like no one really knows, but maybe between Arthur and Katie, there's that mayor's coffee clutch that you're on the listserv is maybe to find out how they may, as a collective team, maybe invite them in and really get them on the same page.
No, this is, well, I mean, even if there's not a big update, it's a crucial community issue. We had a lot of interest in it tonight. So I think, we'll just an update, that might not even really be much to say, just an update about that update. So I'm for that. Just want to keep the community
And
engaged.
if the county does do some listening sessions or
of course.
something, I can always promote those.
Exactly. Yeah,
so.
we will do that. Okay. Well, thank you, Ron. Again, we're going to move on to Michael's manager's report. Thank you, Michael. And I need to apologize to you. When the officers were here earlier, I was going to kick it to you to say something to Officer Nick, and I looked this way
it's
and
all
not
good.
that
I
way.
jumped in.
So
It's all-
thank you.
And Ron, you can go ahead and drop off.
Thank
very
you.
much.
Oh, okay, you're sending me home.
Yes,
Yeah, go home. Go home.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
You're awesome, Ron. Thank you.
It is 9:39. Okay, quick report today. Thank you so much. There's a lot of things happening. We are off and running to a new year. All the council members and the staff have signed their oaths of office and completed their conflict of interest forms. So that's the first thing. We held a administrative meeting with the council, which was very productive. We went over, my kind of plan for the year, my work plan. And I have an entire list of projects I'm going to be working on, which I've updated after that meeting. In your packet directly after my manager report, you'll see the administrative calendar that has been updated with the feedback I received from the council. So there's a lot of stuff going on, even though a lot of people are going on vacation right now, and we're taking a recess in August. I will still be here working, other than a couple long weeks.
He'll be working on the minutes.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. All right.
We'll see if the minutes can take me under 2 hours to write when the meetings go 3 hours, but
Yeah.
okay, moving on. FY 24 annual report was published in the July newsletter. There was also a video I put together that was sent out in the last Friday wrap up. So if you
Great.
didn't get a chance to see that, you can see that.
I've already gotten some resident comments. They like it.
Okay.
They like it.
Okay, good. That's something we'll continue to do, hopefully, and maybe improve upon as well. So take a look at that and let me know what you think. What else? Under administration, just as another reminder, we did not have an August meeting. Under maintenance, the storm on Monday night was very aggressive. I think we lost 7 trees around the village.
Where do you start approving the bills for taking down those trees?
Yeah.
It's not
These
cheap.
are pricey.
I think with the severe drought we've been experiencing the last 2 months, and then a gust of wind, very, very focused and localized in this area. Though I have heard of some trees in DC coming down too, so we're not completely alone, but trees are having a really hard time. So a couple things. One, Mulherron was on it, Pepco was on it, everyone was out there the same day. So that's all fine. That was really good. For the young trees that we have planted, I think a lot of those are been struggling. So this year, when we do the tree planting program, we're gonna manage how they plant those better. And we're also gonna provide Paula Goldberg and I are gonna put together a 1-pager guide on how to care for your tree, especially in the first year, to hopefully improve. Young trees have a hard time surviving. That's just the reality. Street trees have a very hard life. That's the reality of street trees. But if we can improve the success rate of those trees, because that is the future of our urban tree farm here. The other thing I want to mention under maintenance, I will be sending emails and reminders, warnings to people that have overgrown vegetation over sight lines, over street signs, over sidewalks, and that type of thing. I have a list of 20 houses that have are in violation of our code right now. So that is in the works. And then under project updates, real quick, we have hired Potomac Valley surveyors to survey the 6 properties along Brookville Road that we might need to sign an easement with to get a little corner of their property or something to fit the 5-foot wide ADA compliant sidewalk. So that is moving forward. They have a 4-week time period. They're supposed to turn that around. Meanwhile, we're moving forward at updating the conceptual plan with our engineer, Jason Azar. I have provided detailed comments on every single property along that stretch. There's 16 properties. I have pictures, I have notes about different features we want to see in the design. So he's going to be updating that plan at the same time. Then we'll be ready to move to permitting.
Do we don't have a paving contractor these days?
We do not have a paving contractor. We will need to hire a paving contractor specifically for this project. When we go to permitting, we can put out an RFP simultaneously so that those will overlap. So we can hopefully get both of those done. Because I want to have a paving contractor under contract by the end of the year. That way we can write in there that it's the ARPA funds being used for it. And that's the last bit of the ARPA funds would go to that. So that's under projects. Like I said, I have a whole list of projects, so I'm not gonna go over every single one of them right here, but if there are questions about something that I'm supposed to be moving forward, you all have my phone number. I have hired, this is already out of date, I have hired Julian Lampier. That was the consultant that worked with the election committee on updating the voter roll this year. I have hired him back under another contract that Ron was able to review. to help me update the resident directory. That's going to be a big project that we want to kind of get done pretty quickly here. I'm assuming that'll be done in the next 2 months,
Okay.
full resident directory update. That's going to require me reaching out to everybody, asking them if their contact information is still up to date, if they would like to, if the people that haven't shared it, if they would like to share their contact information publicly, and then going to print again. So that's quite a process, and Julian's really good with the data, so I think that's going to be really helpful to have him on board. I have met with a surveying company, a local government consulting firm that does this type of stuff. They actually purchased the entire National Research Center, and what they do is they provide a template survey that they can benchmark against other communities our same size. They have, thousands of communities across the country that they can compare us to and
How
see
did you
how we're
find that?
doing. They are an affiliate of my former employer, International City County Management Association. So I reached out to one of my mentors there. She recommended them.
Oh, good.
And they do a lot of work in the field. So the guy I met with was in Colorado, but he's worked with other communities, even in Maryland, he said. So he is putting together an estimate for me. They kind of have an out of the box ready thing to go. And then we'll be able to include, a certain amount of our own questions as well. So if there's something that the template doesn't ask, we can ask some specific questions as well. And they will come and they will present the data to the council at a council meeting, probably on Zoom. And so they would be able to, go through the benchmarking, provide all that data to us. And they might even be able to compare us in previous years too. If they can take,
Provide us what?
provide us, trend lines and stuff to our previous year surveys. So
Right,
that's
yeah.
something that we were looking at as well.
Right,
So
yeah.
that's very exciting. I think the council approving the budget for me to have a little administrative contractors here and there on things means that we can really professionalize some of these things we've already been doing, but we can just, we can do them better.
Good.
So that's really good.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Michael.
And I
thank you.
think that does, again, I did include Doug's monthly report in the
Yes,
back of this,
Mhm.
and I do have the administrative calendar there. And like I said, I have a whole list of projects of things I'm working on, so if there's any questions, I'm happy to.
Good.
I said the other day to Jeff, sometimes this job feels like juggling 100 balls, but
It is.
I am trying to
You
do
are,
all
yeah.
these things for it,
Yeah,
so
he is.
I can't juggle 3 balls. I don't know about it.
101.
It is a lot. Thank you so much, Michael, and for all you do, and Aaron. I was gonna open it up to resident.
Okay,
Comment.
may I just comment real quick?
Okay,
I just
yes.
wanted to respond really, very, very briefly, and you're magnificent, as we all know. We don't have to do this now, but I did want to follow up on, and again, Andrew everyone's involved, but just on the whole Turner Brookville exit piece and just see where we could go, without in a very thoughtful way and recognizing there isn't a set solution, but maybe speaking to Shirazi, it sounds like we've got a couple things on the plate with him and maybe we could just figure something out. That was just one. The other, awesome on the survey. The only thing I just want to, and again, this will come out in the weeds of all this, is recognizing that they are going to bring a real extraordinary technical, view on how they do all the psychrometric and the analysis and all that. I don't want to, I'm sure this is part of their methods, but we don't want to lose sight on the idea that the expertise and the inputs of what's important in the survey comes from council, residents, community. So we just, I'm sure it's part of their methodology, but really that they'll take time to, interview and talk and,
They will have our previous surveys.
They already have our
They
previous
already have
surveys.
them, okay.
Yep, and I haven't actually hired them yet.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting for a final, proposal and everything, so.
Okay.
What I'm getting at is they're gonna bring a lot of magnificence, but they don't know our village, so we just wanna make
Right.
sure that we have a chance to input and all that. I know it's part of the method, I just wanna put it out there. So.
Totally.
Great, thank you, Jeff. Resident comments. I don't think we have many residents still on. And we started with such a robust following. Anybody, Marty has her hand up?
Just, I don't know if Liz is still in the room, but
No,
I will.
she's not.
I do want to say thank you from many of us, including Liz, to Michael for, number one, professionalizing a lot of what we're doing here. Michael, I think that you're on the right track on so many things. and, hiring the expertise we need because we don't need to be experts at everything ourselves. But I do want to say specifically about the parking enforcement, that is so important to a lot of people. So thank you, and to please follow up on that. And if Wayne can be our parking enforcement officer, that's up to you, but let's have a parking enforcement officer here. And thank you again on all the good solid work here and the professionalism that I now see coming to having standard operating procedures in Martin's Additions. And I hope the council will continue to really focus on resident input and respecting residents' point of view and soliciting resident input. As Jeff has rather eloquently said, I think that we need to rebuild a lot of community here still. And one way to do that is by asking residents what they think and then listening to what the residents say. And so I know, Katie, that's one of your strengths as well. So I look forward to a very productive year of resident inclusion here on input, because we have a lot of smart people in this village and we don't want to discourage them from participating. I would also ask the council to think about another larger issue. We've had several uncontested elections in the last 10 years, and there are various reasons for that. But I would like to ask the council to think very hard about what it would be useful for you all to do, the three of you who are still here, that would make it more attractive, more doable, more reasonable for people to run. Because it really is a sign of health in a community when you have contested elections. And I would like to make sure that we move on that. The election committee is very strictly limited by our own code of behavior, that we can only put out general solicitations asking all eligible voters if they'd like to run. We cannot solicit any individual. And we certainly stuck by that closely this year, which means it's up to the council, if you think there's somebody who'd be good, to approach that individual, because the election committee cannot do that by our current rules, our internal committee rules. So I don't know how we have more competitive elections, but it is healthier for a community to have competitive elections. So I leave that with you guys, and I thank you all for serving. The three who are still here tonight, I thank you all very much. And Arthur, you and I should talk about those 9 items on that
Hey,
list. because we
Marty,
need to.
here's something to think about, what your view would be, term limits.
Let's talk about that for a second, Arthur. I looked into that because, it came up in the comments we got. And
Arthur really wanted to extend the conversation, didn't he?
No, 2
I
seconds
don't
here.
want to talk about it now. I wanted to put it on the table for you to think about in future conversations.
Absolutely. Do you want me to call you about it? I can give you a call.
Put together some thoughtful comments.
May I take my 10-second?
Oh, actually, can you actually pause that?
I
gonna
would be
circle
delighted
right-
to pause.
This is actually a good point to that. So thank you, Marty. And I don't see any other hands. So I think we're okay on resident comments, and thank you for being the only resident still there. So yes, this could be a moot point since there's only 3 of us, but I bumped council comments from earlier on the agenda to now. And I just wanted to explain the addition of a new and hopefully recurring item on the agenda to both our the council comments item. So the inspiration for this is based on my last 3 years of experience as a council member, and sometimes the lack of opportunity to speak to new issues or provide updates on issues that we're individually interested in, but maybe lack a set point on the agenda. And I know in my case, it has been difficult to insert myself or find the appropriate time to speak during meetings if it didn't fall under a set agenda item. So as a result, I often, piggybacked off of Michael's management report, kind of like I'm doing right now, but or the resident comments section, and at the end of meetings, which, I want to keep the resident comments as a space for the residents. So, maybe sometimes we can use this council comment section to then speak, more in depthly to that. So that said, this is just an idea. I'd like to limit this space to maybe no more than 2 minutes each, for all of us to hear from every member of the council during council meetings individually. And if you would rather not participate, you can just yield your time, for that update. But, I just think this might be good for the community and good for each one of us. So, are you timing at me as we speak?
No, but
You
I
didn't?
can.
Oh, that's okay. I
I-
think
I
I
have
did
my
it under 2
stopwatch.
minutes. I did it
I
under
have
2
my
minutes.
stopwatch
It
right
gives
here.
us an additional time to speak. I've never done so much speaking in my life as I did tonight. So are there any takers? Jeff, would you like to comment now?
What is?
2 minutes,
2
2
minutes,
minutes.
okay.
It's kind of a.
starting
And it's
now.
on the
There you
screen.
go.
Wonderful. Well, first of all, as they say, long live our chair.
Oh.
And Arthur, again, I just want to just express that you bring so much incredible insight and experience and, just this idea of these transitions and new, and Katie, to have you as the chair during this 40th anniversary year is quite an extraordinary and wonderful thing for the community. With that said, I'm gonna not take up and rehash everything, but I will share just in commenting, Marty, we could look at this in 2 ways. First, let's maybe in this annual survey, we can have a couple questions on the, running or, I'm curious at how people might respond, but I think it's the typical, they're busy, blah, blah, blah. But I would also look at like it as the glass half full, that perhaps folks, when they like who happens to be there, or they feel there's confident, we may not always do things that everyone feels happy or confident with, but perhaps they feel that they are in good hands. So I don't necessarily see it as a bad thing. We've had uncontested elections before. It hasn't always happened, but it's not like it's atypical. So, but all good. And, with that said, I'm really looking forward to perhaps the greatest year ever together.
Excellent. Thank you. You got 26 seconds to spare. All right, Arthur, would you like to?
Yeah, one point, and this has to do with these multi-family dwellings. I've been saying this for about the last 4 or 5 years. Change is coming. Densification is coming. One of the consistent findings in research on housing discrimination is single-family housing associated with discrimination, racial discrimination. It's also associated with the higher price of housing. And so we're seeing this in California has done away with single family housing. It's coming across the country as people recognize and accept it. And I think the question for us is, how do we deal with it? How do we deal with it intelligently, in a smart way, but recognizing that it's probably coming. And our little town that time forgot is probably not going to be here in the present form for much longer. There will be some changes, at least around the edges, if not more. So I think we have to be thinking about it in creative ways, and learn how to live with it. So that's my lesson. I'll be saying this all the time from now on, because I think it is something we have to adjust to.
Great. Thank you both. And 36 seconds to spare.
Yeah.
Very good. All right, well, thank you both. Yeah, so it's something I'd like just space, extra space just for us each to just individually talk. So, all right. So, yes. So as we mentioned before, a better respite, even Congress takes a recess. There will be no council meeting in August or a monthly newsletter, but the village staff will continue the weekly wrap-ups and other communication. And so we look forward to seeing everyone in September, just like the song. So I'm going to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Aye.
Okay. All in favor? All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks
Thank
for-
you.